Major is in our Washington bureau. Major, I want to start with these pictures that we've seen in Albuquerque and Anaheim. We're just weeks away from the party's convention in Cleveland. Is there a concern about violence and security within the party?
Well, certainly the preparations for the Republican National Convention in Cleveland have always had built into it a security screen around the convention center, a perimeter, if you will. That's not new by any stretch of the imagination. As a matter of fact, before I came to CBS, I worked at National Journal, and I wrote a column when I was a columnist back then about the security perimeters at both the Republican and national conventions in 2012, and I called it a dress rehearsal for the police state. Believe me, these national conventions are already overrun with massive security perimeters and a huge demonstration of force, both police and Secret Service, helicopters, barricades, the whole thing. All of that will be in Cleveland, and there will be an elevated or slightly elevated sense of unease about this protest culture that is now beginning to develop around Trump rallies. It seems to be more organized and a little bit more intense than it was during the primaries. I think there's one thing that's worth pointing out, as Steve Futterman was talking to you, Elaine, about just a moment ago. You have some protesters who are there to make a political point and do so peacefully and in every way consistent with this country's long and noble history of civil disobedience. But there are others who were clearly there to be agitators. That was clearly true in Albuquerque, and it appeared to be true at the edges in Anaheim. People who were there to either start a fight, instigate some sort of clash, or just basically get involved in some mayhem. And those are different kinds of protesters than we saw during the primaries. Most of those people had a political message that they wanted to convey, either inside or outside a Trump rally. And what we're beginning to see now is something that's a little bit edgier than that, a little bit more violent than that, a little bit more confrontational than that, which will present different challenges for local police as the Trump campaign continues to make its way across the country. The Trump campaign will be in my hometown of San Diego tomorrow. We'll see what happens there. But so far this week, 2 rallies, 2 sets of protests, and again, as I point out, this more edgier component of people who don't appear to be there only to make a political point, but to raise a ruckus and engage the authorities and do some damage along the way.
Yeah, we're going to be watching those situations very closely. Major, I want to turn to this. The news about the Trump-Ryan phone call. What do we know about that?
That it was initiated by Paul Ryan, and he's trying to find a way for him to engage Trump as directly as possible and as frequently as possible to essentially work on the choreography of his eventual endorsement. Now, Paul Ryan has made it clear he wants to endorse Trump, he hopes to endorse Trump, but he doesn't want it to be, in his words, a phony or a transparently political endorsement. He wants it based on some fundamental understanding between the two about what conservatism is, what conservatism isn't, and where they are likely to most frequently agree. That hasn't happened yet, but I can tell you this, Elaine. Ryan's inability to get this done to his satisfaction is beginning to cause a little bit of friction within the House Republican Conference itself, because rank-and-file Republicans at first took their lead from Paul Ryan. When he said, I'm not willing to endorse, I'm not ready to endorse, they all held back. Increasingly, though, individual members of the House Republican Conference are endorsing Trump on their own, identifying local issues in which they agree with Trump and where they believe the contrast with Hillary Clinton is sharpest and works best for them in their own district politically. That is a signal to Ryan that they're becoming restive. They're becoming restless with his refusal to cross the line they know eventually he's going to cross. So they're making their own political moves and their own political calculations. That's creating a little bit of tension that I don't think Speaker Ryan anticipated, but is nevertheless having to deal with.
Major, what about the fact that Speaker Ryan's office confirmed the phone call ahead of time? Is there a strategy behind that?
Well, it's just acknowledging that Ryan is doing what he has to do. Look, if Ryan felt comfortable about where this process was, he'd call Donald Trump anytime. It's not as if the Speaker of the House can't get the presumptive Republican nominee on the phone anytime he wants to. He can. So why make this public? Why confirm it in advance? To demonstrate that you're working through this. Like I said before, the term choreography is not necessarily complimentary. It is a dance that has a structured purpose behind it, and it has to be done theatrically to please the audience. That's what's going on here. No one doubts in the Trump camp or the Ryan camp that eventually Ryan's going to cross this line and endorse Trump. It just has to be on Ryan's terms or something that appears to be on Ryan's terms, and only he knows what that looks like, and only he knows the timing of that. But because it's taking longer than many House Republicans anticipated, they're getting a little restless.
All right, Major Garrett in Washington for us. Major, thank you so much.
Sure.